The sun doesn't ask for permission to rise. It doesn't wait for applause. It simply shows up on time every single day. And today, June 29, it rose again. But today it rose with purpose. Today something shifted, not in the skies, but in us. Because today the earth sees the truth, not the filtered truth, not the comfortable one. The raw truth, the truth about who we've been, the truth about what we've allowed, the truth about what we've feared. For too long we've worn masks, not the ones on our faces, but the ones on our souls. We smiled while breaking inside. We laughed while doubting ourselves. We settled when we were born to rise. But today, this very moment is different, because the sunrise didn't just bring light, it brought accountability. Today is not about regrets, it's about revelations. We finally see that success isn't found in the spotlight. It's built in silence, in the shadows, in the late nights and early mornings. It's found in the choices we make when no one's watching. June 29 isn't just another date, it's a call to action. A reminder that we are not victims of our circumstances. We are authors of our futures. So if you're tired of pretending, if you're done blaming the world, if your soul is screaming for something more, then listen to it. Because the earth doesn't just see the truth today, it's waiting to see what you will do with it. Rise like the sun. Let the fire in you burn brighter than your fears. Step into the day with courage. And let the world feel your truth unapologetically. The sun doesn't ask for permission to rise. It never did. It doesn't hesitate, doesn't stall, doesn't doubt its purpose. No one votes for it. No one decides if it's worthy of another day. It just rises, with all its fire, all its consistency, all its certainty. Every morning, without fail, it shows up. And in that daily rising, it teaches us a silent but powerful lesson. That purpose doesn't ask, it acts. That calling doesn't wait for comfort. It moves forward regardless. The sun doesn't second guess. And maybe that's what we've forgotten. Because somewhere along the way, we started waiting. Waiting for permission, for support, for validation, for someone to say we were finally enough. We waited for signs, for green lights, for perfect timing. And while we waited, days passed. Opportunities died. Dreams turned to doubt. And the worst part, the world never owed us a single lace. But we kept expecting it anyway. What if, instead of waiting, we decided to rise? What if we stopped thinking we need to be chosen, when the truth is, we already are? We were chosen the moment we were born. The very fact that we're here, breathing, thinking, hurting, healing, means we're already meant for something more. You don't exist by accident. And the sun rising today, that's not just the earth spinning. That's a reminder from the universe that you're still here for a reason. Another shot, another moment, another chance to say, I'm ready to show up. Think about how powerful that is. That today wasn't promised, but it's been given to you anyway. And not just to wake up, but to awaken. To open your eyes and realize you're not powerless. You never were. The system might be broken. The road might be long. But the fire inside you that still burns, even when you've ignored it, even when you tried to silence it, even when you convinced yourself you weren't enough, that fire stayed lit. That fire is your truth. And today, as the sun rose, something deep within you remembered what it means to stand in your truth. Truth isn't comfortable. It doesn't always feel good. In fact, the real kind of truth burns. It exposes. It forces you to admit that you've played small, that you've said, I'm fine, when you were drowning, that you've accepted less because you were afraid of asking for more. But here's what the earth shows us every single day. It doesn't shrink for anyone. Mountains stand tall. Oceans roar unapologetically. Trees reach for the sky like they're chasing God himself. Nature never doubts itself. It just is. So why do we shrink when we were made to rise? Somewhere in our stories we began to believe lies. That we needed to have it all figured out. That if we messed up, we were failures. That if we spoke our truth, we'd be rejected. So we put on masks, smiled when we were angry, stayed silent when we wanted to scream, played roles we never auditioned for just to make others comfortable. But today, the earth is tired of the lies. Today it sees the truth. And the truth is that you've always been more than what they saw, more than your past, more than your mistakes, more than your status, more than your fears, more than the stories you tell yourself at 2 a.m. when no one's around. The truth is that the version of you that the world is waiting for is buried underneath all the fear, all the pretending, all the waiting. And the only way out is through. You have to walk through the fire, through the pain, through the doubts, through the lonely nights when no one claps for you. Because becoming the real you isn't about performance. It's about perseverance. It's about waking up like the sun and deciding to rise even when no one notices. Even when it's hard, even when you feel like quitting. It's in those moments that character is forged, that identity is shaped, that truth is revealed. Not the kind of truth people post online, but the kind that lives in silence, that survives storms, that refuses to die. And let me tell you something about storms. They don't last, but they do leave scars. And those scars, those are your proof. Proof that you made it through what should have broken you. That you're still standing, still fighting. That's the kind of truth the earth honors, not perfection, but presence, not image, but integrity, not status, but soul. There is something sacred about showing up when you don't feel ready. There is power in choosing to rise, not because you have the answers, but because you've stopped running from the questions. What am I here for? Why did I survive what others didn't? What do I still carry that I haven't faced? These aren't questions for comfort. These are questions for transformation. And transformation doesn't happen in the light. It happens in the dark, in the waiting, in the silence, in the places you thought no one saw. But today, June 29, the earth sees you. And not the version you post, the real you. The you that's broken but brave, flawed but fearless, scared but still standing. That's the truth you've been hiding. That's the you the world needs. And the only thing standing in the way is your willingness to stop waiting and start rising. Let this be the day you choose to burn, not with rage, but with purpose. Let this be the day you stop chasing approval and start walking in alignment. Because when you live in your truth, you become dangerous in the best way. You become unstoppable, not because you have no fear, but because fear no longer controls you. You understand that fear is not a wall, it's a door. And once you walk through it, you never go back. The day you stop asking for permission to rise is the day the world changes for you. People will notice. Not because you're louder, but because you're finally real. They'll feel your presence. They'll see the fire in your eyes. They'll know you're no longer playing small, and you won't have to say a word. The earth will know, the energy will shift. The atmosphere will feel different, because when someone decides to live fully, everyone around them feels it. You don't need a crowd to be powerful. You don't need fame to be meaningful. You don't need millions of followers to change a life. You need fire. You need focus. You need truth. And the moment you embrace that, you step into a rhythm that no storm can break. A rhythm that aligns with something greater than you. Something divine. Something eternal. That rhythm is purpose. Purpose doesn't shout. It whispers. It reminds you in quiet moments who you were before the world tried to tell you who to be. It lives beneath the noise, beneath the trauma, beneath the pressure. And when you strip away everything else, money, image, opinions, what's left is the truth of who you are. That's where you begin. That's where you rise. So let today be the first day of your real life. The day you decide that silence won't hold you anymore. That shame won't define you. That fear won't limit you. And if your voice shakes, let it shake. If your knees tremble, let them. Rise anyway. Speak anyway. Move anyway. Because progress isn't about perfection. It's about movement. It's about deciding that the pain of staying the same is worse than the fear of change. Some people will misunderstand your rising. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you're different. Good, you're supposed to be. Growth requires it. You weren't born to stay where you started. You were born to expand, to evolve, to elevate. And yes, that means leaving some things behind: people, patterns, comfort. But what you gain in return is worth everything. You gain freedom, you gain clarity. You gain a life that reflects who you really are, not who you were pretending to be. This isn't just about success, it's about soul, about integrity, about knowing that when the sun rose today, it didn't just light the sky, it lit your path. It gave you another chance to align, to choose, to change. And if you missed that chance yesterday, that's okay. Today is new. And if you waste it, tomorrow will be too. But you don't have to waste it. You can decide right now that this will be the day you stopped running and started rising. Because somewhere out there, someone is waiting on your truth to set them free. Someone is waiting to see you shine so they know it's possible for them too. And when you rise, you don't rise alone. You become a light for others, a reflection of what's possible, a beacon for those still in the dark. That's the power of living your truth. It multiplies, it echoes, it outlives you. Now that the signal's clear and the moment's yours, the silence doesn't echo, it listens. The universe holds its breath while your heart beats out a new rhythm. That pulse isn't background noise. It's a map, a declaration, a vow made long before fear arrived. Every second you breathe forward, space bends for your awakening. No applause necessary, no spotlight craved. Stillness itself steps aside so your being can fully arrive. Not everyone comprehends the shift, but truth doesn't wait for comprehension. It simply lives. You weren't shaped for confinement, not crafted for camouflage. The essence within you has waited ages, not for timing, but for willingness. Willingness to become, not merely to survive. Growth isn't neat, it's the chaos before flight. It's the earthquake before elevation. Fiction fades fast when confronted with realness. All the performances dissolve once resolve steps in. There's no return when vision clarifies. Doubt may whisper, but it no longer leads. What replaces hesitation is not certainty, it's alignment. That's stronger, that's louder, that holds. The ground doesn't beg to be held up, it just is. You don't have to manufacture worth, design belonging, or simulate purpose. You're already coded with it. But that truth hides beneath decades of should, almost, and what if. You peel back the conditioning layer by layer until what's left is untamed, unfiltered, undeniable. Once exposed, your energy cannot be undone. It reaches past skin, past noise, past memory. It remembers what you forgot. You were always complete. Every battle didn't break you, it sharpened your edges. Every misstep didn't define you, it redirected your course. Every detour carried unseen preparation. And now there's no mask left to wear. Only skin, soul, and sound. Only intention. Only ignition. The world doesn't need polish. It needs people willing to burn down old blueprints and write raw declarations in their own blood with trembling hands if they must. You're not here to echo others. You're here to resonate. That's different. That's generational. That's legacy. Resonance doesn't copy. It reverberates. And today, your frequency shakes foundations. You no longer fold into limitation. You expand, quietly, relentlessly, and without compromise. While others seek noise, you choose presence. While systems reward imitation, you choose originality. While mediocrity celebrates surface, you dive under currents where diamonds remain untouched. That's where you operate now. Beneath the distraction, beyond the illusion, inside the marrow of what matters. Not everything beautiful screams. Some revolutions are invisible. Some awakenings begin in breath rather than battle. Some souls heal not through answers, but through presence. This is one of those seasons. And you are one of those souls. Quiet doesn't equal weak. Gentle doesn't mean passive. You right now are a storm disguised as stillness. Discomfort may still knock, but you've changed the locks. Insecurity may pace, but your gate no longer opens for fear. Your architecture has shifted. You're no longer a house for shame. You've become a temple for truth. And temples don't apologize for standing tall. Others might retreat at your evolution. Let them. Every shedding isn't a loss, it's a leveling up. Every release opens another corridor. And on the other side of every closed door is not rejection, but redirection. Let that guide you. Time doesn't demand explanations. It demands movement. Today, you no longer crawl toward identity, you stride. Every footprint now imprints intention. Every motion now declares presence. Even your silence disrupts narratives. Even your pause holds command. That's how potent your authenticity has become. Once veils lift, reality doesn't shrink. It stretches. You don't belong in the background of anyone's story. You were born to carve space. Your presence is an exclamation, not a question. That realization doesn't shout, it solidifies. Eyes will watch. Not all will applaud. That's irrelevant. Relevance isn't measured by followers, it's measured by impact. And impact, real impact, begins the moment you choose realness over reception. That choice rewires the cosmos. That choice becomes your legacy. There will be moments, quiet, piercing, sacred, where doubt tries to bargain. That's when you remember you've already paid with sweat, soul, and silence, nothing owed. No proof required. Your breath alone is authority. Your existence alone is testament. You carry futures in your footsteps. You hold awakenings in your gaze. Your voice, even whispered, cracks walls. Not because it's loud, but because it's real. And realness breaks illusions better than volume ever could. You don't need gates opened. You are the entrance. You don't need doors held. You walk through walls. Your momentum isn't borrowed. It's built. From long nights, from forgotten efforts, from decisions made when no one was watching. That's what makes this moment unshakable. It's not luck, it's lineage. You didn't just arrive. You emerged. Not because it was easy, but because quitting never held enough value. There were nights silence screamed, days direction blurred. Moments where nothing made sense, and still, you chose. Still, you continued. Every not yet was preparing a now. Every delay was shaping endurance. Every scar became a signature, marking the exact spots where surrender was resisted. That resistance became your resilience. You're no longer begging tables for crumbs. You're building your own feast. And those meant to eat with you will recognize the flavor. Those meant to grow beside you will recognize the soil. Those meant to walk beside you will recognize the pace. Power isn't stolen, it's remembered. Today, your memory sharpens. You see who you were before fear arrived, before approval mattered, before validation became currency. You were always this, you simply forgot. But today, forgetting ends. Now, you don't just act, you embody. You don't pretend, you reflect. You don't react, you redefine. Your every step is a mirror for those still searching. Not because you're perfect, but because you've stopped pretending. And nothing disrupts artificial systems more than someone completely, fearlessly, and unapologetically whole. The moment truth becomes your standard, compromise becomes foreign. You no longer barter energy for comfort. You no longer trade purpose for popularity. You no longer minimize to fit smallness. The only thing you shrink now are lies. The only thing you sacrifice now is stagnation. Watch what happens when a person reclaims their core. Watch what moves when alignment becomes fuel. Watch what shifts when clarity replaces chaos. Entire atmospheres change. That's who you are now, a shift maker. This isn't awakening, this is ascension. But it's not loud, it's cellular. It rewrites DNA, it realigns timelines. It restores forgotten frequencies. The kind that heal nations through individuals. That's the ripple you've become. You are no longer waiting to be seen. You are witnessing yourself. You are no longer hoping to be chosen. You are choosing yourself daily, fiercely, entirely. And that self-choice begins a revolution deeper than any war ever waged. You may not notice it immediately, but the ground beneath you does. The wind changes pace. The sky feels lighter. Even shadows begin to dance differently. Because wherever truth dwells, everything must adjust, including you. So continue boldly, continue gracefully. Continue like your ancestors dreamed this very breath into being. Because they did, and you are their answer. You are not arrival, you are activation. You are not trend, you are truth. And from this moment forward, everything bends for your becoming. Every breath from here etches legacy into the air. You don't chase moments, you sculpt them. Fabric of reality bends beneath decisions not made in haste, but in full awareness of what you carry. No longer bound by patterns that muted your fire, you're now governed by inner laws, shaped through silent trials and unseen awakenings. You don't follow paths. You construct roads across terrain previously declared impassable. What flows through you now isn't ambition. It's responsibility. To stand upright in a world that bends for illusions takes more than belief. It requires vow, the unspoken kind. One made to unseen futures, to unborn movements, to unshaped echoes waiting for permission to vibrate through untouched generations. Your presence grants that access. Others might wonder how stillness can roar. They'll look, searching for visible signs, unaware that transformation often walks barefoot through broken glass. They miss that strength isn't proven by volume, but by steadiness through storms no one else notices. You're no longer seeking recognition for wounds stitched together under moonlight. You've learned that quiet growth blooms louder than applause ever could. What lives inside your bones can't be explained. It must be expressed. It seeps through every pause, every gaze, every intention. You don't speak to impress, you speak to awaken. You don't move for validation. You move because staying still would dishonor everything that bled to bring you here. You don't enter rooms anymore. You shift them because alignment needs no announcement. It arrives and suddenly walls lean forward, gravity adjusts, and people feel things they forgot they knew. That's what truth does. It doesn't demand attention. It rewrites atmosphere without warning. Frequencies shift when someone finally embodies their message, when their presence becomes sermon, when their shadow holds more clarity than others' noise. And now that you've stepped into that identity, you're no longer imitating purpose. You're emitting it. There's no blueprint for where you're headed, not because it's unclear, but because no one's walked it yet. You're becoming blueprint. Each step you take draws new maps on ancient lands. You're not following direction. You are direction. That's why it's unfamiliar. That's why it's sacred. When the world asks for copies, your soul demands creation. That tension once felt like conflict. Now it feels like fuel. Resist isn't a threat, it's confirmation. Discomfort doesn't signify danger, it indicates alignment. Because when truth confronts conditioning, unease is inevitable. But that unease doesn't deter you anymore. You welcome it like wind against flame. Because now it only feeds what's real. You're no longer avoiding friction. You've become fireproof. You've stopped watering yourself down for palatability. You've realized that dilution never satisfied destiny. Nothing about your journey fits into timelines crafted by comfort. You've outgrown explanation. What once required 10 paragraphs now fits inside a single presence. That presence no longer asks, will they understand? It simply says, this is. And in doing so, teaches without speaking. Your very existence now serves as permission. Others watching may not grasp what shifted, but they'll feel safer in their truth because you stood in yours. Your courage now multiplies in silence, breaking barriers before words are needed. Your clarity sharpens the air around you. Even doubt hesitates near someone that embodied. You've transcended craving opportunity. You're now embodiment of opportunity itself, not a moment, but a frequency, a possibility, a new language that others don't speak yet but will. You're not waiting for access. You've become gateway. There are no detours anymore. Even the scars have found placement. No part wasted. No moment forgotten. All pieces merged into power that doesn't fluctuate with circumstance. You now hold an interior unshakable by exterior chaos. That foundation doesn't need repair. It needs honoring. You stop negotiating with lesser versions of yourself. You no longer explain boundaries. They're felt. You no longer prove commitment. It's evident in presence alone. You don't warn about the rise. That realization doesn't inflate. It roots. It doesn't demand. It reflects. While others chase pace, you've chosen depth. Where speed fails, intention speaks. You're not faster. You're deeper. You don't touch surface. You pierce marrow. And through that piercing, you heal spaces people didn't know needed healing. You carry remedies in your walk, solutions in your silence, futures in your decisions. Not because you sought them, but because you became them through fire, through stillness, through standing when crawling felt safer. That standing didn't scream, it endured. Endurance has taught you more than achievement ever could. It taught you that real victory isn't arrival, it's return to essence, return to mission, return to clarity that doesn't negotiate for comfort. You've returned. No longer tossed between roles scripted by society, you hold your own authorship now. That authorship writes in ink drawn from experience. It doesn't raise, doesn't revise, doesn't apologize. It documents stories like yours aren't fiction. They're blueprints disguised as narrative. Even now, as the atmosphere bends around your resolve, doubt may try to linger. But you've stopped battling shadows. They no longer scare. They signal. They no longer restrict. They reveal. You've befriended discomfort, danced with confusion, and emerged fluent in resilience. You don't guard your essence anymore. You honor it. You don't shrink for comfort. You rise through contrast. Even absence now feels like presence because you've stopped relying on outer metrics for internal certainty. Your compass isn't north anymore. It's inward. Every action now births echoes. Every decision becomes domino. That's what embodiment does. It doesn't just affect. It reverberates. Long after you leave spaces, the vibration remains. Not because of what you said, but because of who you were while standing there. Your presence has become practice. Practice of truth, practice of devotion, practice of remembering that every breath holds meaning. If you choose to recognize it, you've chosen. Now, even silence carries impact. Even pauses heal. You've stopped waiting for applause because you understand something deeper. Reverence doesn't make noise. Reverence notices, and the right ones. Those who feel what words fail to express. They've already noticed. You're not here to convince, you're to mirror, to awaken, to invite. Those ready will recognize. Those not yet open will remember in time. Either way, you continue. Not because you need outcome, but because you've become process. Process over product. Alignment over applause. Intention over imagery. That's how revolutions begin. Not with eruption, but with decision. Quiet, firm, undeniable decisions made deep within when no one is watching and everything is uncertain. You no longer walk into spaces seeking to be seen. You arrive knowing you see, you feel. That knowing isn't arrogance, it's arrival. Not a destination, but at ownership of every inch, every flaw, every gift once hidden. That ownership makes you whole. You've become unshakable not because challenges ceased, but because you no longer define yourself through what opposes you. You define yourself through what arises within you. And what lives within now transcends narrative, transcends systems, transcends expectation. Each moment is no longer just time. It's invitation, an offering, to become more true, to speak more clearly, to move more consciously, to stand more rooted. You've said yes to that offering. And that yes resounds far beyond what your ears can hear. That yes is felt in winds that shift direction without warning. It's felt in hearts that suddenly feel seen without explanation. It's felt in souls that for the first time breathe fully again after holding their breath for decades. Your yes isn't just for you. It's ancestral. It's cosmic. That's the weight and the wonder you now carry. And you carry it not with burden, but with reverence. Because now you don't just know who you are. You live it. What resides beneath that understanding isn't surface. It's root. When emergence becomes your nature, there's no need for framing. You aren't performing presence anymore. You are presence. No questions, no conditions, just essence unfiltered, uninterrupted, unstoppable. The days of being shaped by noise have ended. You've stepped away from echoes and found your sound. Your singular resonance that vibrates not because it's loud, but because it carries depth beyond definition. From here, navigation doesn't rely on confirmation. It leans on direction born from alignment. You're not gauging next steps based on convenience. You're drawing movement from conviction. And that shift isn't simply internal. It stretches into reality, influencing space, time, energy, even perception. You're no longer tethered to expectation. You've severed connection with imitation and walked boldly toward becoming. Others may not see the transition, but your frequency has already informed the field. Unseen layers recognize what words miss. You're no longer decoding yourself for comprehension. You exist, and that suffices. Real transformation doesn't seek explanation. It breathes without needing approval. That breath fuels continuation, not for reward, but for integrity. You don't construct identity through repetition. You forge it through consistency anchored in truth. There's no script anymore, no mask, no projection. Just this raw, living rhythm born from the decision to refuse falsehood. That refusal isn't rebellion, it's reverence. Reverence for soul, for path, for responsibility to remain unchanged by fleeting illusions. Once you've reached this state, compromise no longer tempts. Distractions dissolve, you recognize detours wearing disguises, and instead of entertaining confusion, you stand unwavering. Not rigid but solid. Not unyielding, but anchored. There's strength in stillness that refuses to dilute its origin. Where previously there was hesitation, now lives trust. Not in others, but in essence. That essence doesn't negotiate its value. It doesn't shrink, adjust, or camouflage. It enters, transforms, and departs without needing to explain its effect. You've become fluent in that language. It's not taught. It's remembered. Because somewhere beneath conditioning, beneath wounds, beneath silence, you always carried this knowing. That you weren't designed to conform, to remain unseen, to dissolve within other people's boundaries. You were meant to define edges, push limitations, ignite new understandings. What's shifted now is that realization isn't intellectual, it's cellular. Your structure vibrates at truth's frequency. Falsehood can't survive where clarity radiates from the marrow. You've stopped tolerating environments that drain what was never meant to be questioned in the first place. You don't apologize for presence anymore. You don't ask for belonging. You've created sanctuary within. Every inhale affirms worth that no outside source could ever grant. Every exhale releases residue of past misalignments. Each breath is rebirth. From this vantage, perception sharpens. You notice what once escaped detection, not because you've grown suspicious, but because you've expanded awareness. Awareness that sees beyond behavior, beyond appearance, into intention, into vibration. You're not watching people. You're feeling. Now is compass. Intuition, once silence speaks clearly, guiding without force, correcting without shame. You don't second guess that voice anymore. You honor it even when it challenges comfort, especially when it challenges comfort, because ease is no longer the goal. Growth is. Growth doesn't arrive dressed in applause. It shows up as discomfort, friction, and unfamiliar terrain. But you recognize those conditions now as sacred, indicators that forward movement is occurring, even if traction isn't visible yet. You've learned how to trust momentum you can't yet see. External results have stopped dictating internal state. You've decoupled achievement from identity. Fulfillment isn't sourced from milestones. It flows from alignment. That alignment allows you to move without clinging, serve without depletion, speak without defense. You're not proving anything anymore. That phase ended. You've shifted from proving to being the standard. Being the reminder that embodiment needs no marketing campaign to be magnetic. Authenticity isn't built, it's unveiled. And once unveiled, it becomes mirror, not for flattery, but for awakening. Your presence reveals truth in others simply by existing fully in your own. That reflection isn't always comfortable, but it's always necessary. That's your power now. To reflect without distortion. Distortion doesn't stick anymore. Projection finds no foothold. You've become too aware, too clear, too honest with yourself to allow illusions to root. Even your shadows now serve your light, no longer operating in opposition, but in integration. Wholeness doesn't mean perfection. It means unity. All parts returned acknowledged, honored, and woven into function. You operate from wholeness now, not fragment. That foundation changes everything. How you move, who you choose, what you accept, where you invest. Investment no longer looks like effort spread thin across countless causes. It looks like precision, like intentionality, like saying no without guilt and yes without hesitation. Boundaries aren't walls, they're declarations. Each one speaks clearly. I know what I carry, and I will not place it where it will not be valued. Value has been redefined. It's not about demand, it's about resonance. You now align with experiences, people, and places that match your frequency. Not chase anything that requires distortion to maintain connection. Reciprocity has become your new baseline. And in that space, relationships evolve. Those unable to grow with you naturally fall away, not out of conflict, but misalignment. Loss no longer wounds. It clarifies, separation reveals essence. Only what resonates can remain. The rest dissolves without resistance. You've stopped trying to explain evolution. Not everyone is meant to understand transformation they haven't chosen. That's not judgment. It's acceptance. Acceptance that everyone moves at their own rhythm, and your rhythm no longer waits for synchronization to progress. Progress now isn't measured in speed, but in depth of understanding, presence, action, impact. You've learned that subtle doesn't mean small, and still doesn't mean stagnant. Even silence holds momentum when aligned. You don't rush anymore. Not because you're slow, but because you're intentional. Rushing feels like panic. You've replaced panic with purpose. Purpose doesn't push, it pulls. It draws you forward not through force, but invitation. That invitation isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a whisper that lingers long enough to guide you towards something timeless. You've learned to listen for those whispers, to hear between the noise, to follow sensation over sensation seeking. What once excited now exhausts. What once drained now feels foreign. You've recalibrated. And with that recalibration, your life now holds a different cadence. One that respects, cycles, honors, transitions, and celebrates every micro shift. Even transition no longer terrifies. You've discovered that endings often carry beginnings inside them. You don't grip tightly anymore. You open. You allow. You trust that what exits makes space for what was always meant to find you. Trust isn't hope. It's foundation. Built from every choice made without certainty, every leap without safety net, every time you walked away from what felt secure but wasn't aligned. That trust holds you now. You lean into it like gravity. And gravity now doesn't pull, it grounds. You're no longer trying to float above experience. You're rooted, embodied, engaged. No longer escaping moments. You're devouring them, even the hard ones. Especially the hard ones, because you've realized they refine what comfort never could. That refinement has polished your discernment. You no longer wonder whether something is right. You feel it. No checklist required. No feedback needed, just presence. Just breath, just clarity that doesn't ask. It knows knowing no longer needs defending. It simply is. You've learned that truth speaks clearly when fear steps aside. And when truth leads, everything else either aligns or leaves. You don't mourn what leaves anymore. You bless it. You recognize its role, its gift, its season. Then you release, because nothing sacred clings, and everything real remains. You've stopped praying for ease. You ask for strength, awareness, devotion, because you've learned that devotion outlasts motivation. Devotion doesn't depend on mood. It shows up every time, rain or shine, seen or unseen. That's who you've become. Devoted to truth, to evolution, to showing up for life not as performance, but as presence. And in doing so, you've unlocked power that can't be mimicked, borrowed, or bought. It can only be earned through honesty. That honesty isn't always pleasant. It demands excavation. It calls forth layers buried beneath approval, seeking and image curating. But once revealed, those layers shimmer with freedom. You're no longer sculpting life from fear. You're painting it with clarity. Every stroke is deliberate. Every shade tells story. No edits, no erasures. Just truth in all its raw complexity laid bare. And that truth doesn't need fixing. It needs witnessing. You've become witness to your own becoming, not detached observer, but conscious participant. You're no longer watching life. You're co-creating it. You've ceased shrinking to fit containers that couldn't hold your fullness. You've poured yourself into vision, into alignment, into expansion. What overflows now waters fields you once thought barren, and those fields once dry now bloom, not through force, but through presence, not through control, but through surrender, not through strategy, but through embodiment. You've remembered who you are, and in doing so, you've become everything you were waiting for. And so, standing here now, rooted in everything you've reclaimed, everything you've released, everything you've remembered, you no longer need permission to be who you are. The noise has faded, the pretending has ended, and what remains is undeniable presence shaped by depth, truth, and unwavering devotion. You've traveled inward not to escape, but to rise whole. And in that rising, you've become the very signal the world was waiting for. Silent, steady, and deeply alive. This is not the end. This is the point where everything falls away, and what's real finally begins.